NATO is finished. I've said this 1,000 times. It's a terminal patient. In other words, you walk in the room and here's the terminal patient. He's hooked up to all the machinery. He can't speak, move, or do much. And people like Ricketts want to give the patient a haircut and a shave. The truth is, the various others in the room are going to pull the plug on this patient.
Douglas Macgregor coming out firing against NATO, saying that NATO is already finished, that this entangling alliance is all but dead already, and Project Ukraine has made it so. I want to listen to him and see what he has to say about that, because all indications are NATO is as big and large as ever, but maybe he has some twist on this I haven't heard. Let's get his sense on this. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
It's going to go away. NATO doesn't serve the purpose for which it was founded. And it has been wandering in the wilderness looking for a reason to exist ever since the fall of the Soviet Union. They picked the wrong reason to exist, which was war on the Soviet Union. But they're globalists. They need this enemy picture. They need the lie. They need the narrative that's utterly and completely false and fictitious. They need it because if it's given up and people realize, gosh, we've lost badly. NATO has been a total failure. They've thrown everything they have but the kitchen sink at the Russians. And they've been crushed. And we've killed millions of people or destroyed this country of Ukraine. It may never recover to its former position or strength ever. And all of this for what? To supposedly harm, hurt, destroy Russia. It's a huge failure. If Starmer is compelled to admit that, if Macron is compelled to admit it, if Merz is compelled to admit it, they're finished immediately, within minutes. I think they're all going to go away shortly anyhow. But nevertheless, that would be the downfall of the entire globalist project, of which Project Ukraine is a big part. Remember, these are all the same people that invited millions of people from North Africa, the Middle East, and elsewhere to come into the various European states. And it's created chaos and havoc because the people that live in these countries have said, wait a minute, we can't afford them. We don't want them. Why are they here? What's wrong with being German, French, English, Welsh, Scottish, Irish? Everybody's beginning to ask these questions. The Italians have had it.
Yeah, certainly you're seeing that sense, in Britain and the United States especially, but I'm with Macgregor when it comes to saying that NATO has long outlived its purpose. Certainly it has. After the end of the Cold War, it should have been scrapped. It's a remnant of the Cold War designed to, ostensibly defend against the Soviet Union and the Warsaw Pact. But I'm not with Macgregor when he says that they've been wandering in the wilderness searching for a purpose. No, NATO serves as the European branch of U.S. empire building schemes. It has been such. It's not a defensive alliance as they claim, and you can ask Afghanistan and Libya and the Balkans about that if you don't believe me. This is a empire building institution designed to expand the West's influence into Eastern Europe and Asia, in the aspirations of empire building. So asking the U.S. to withdraw from NATO is asking the U.S. to give up the empire. It's something our ruling class isn't willing to do. And even if the U.S. did that, my sense is that Europeans still want to be part of this thing regardless.
But nobody's been willing to stand up and say, okay, I will take all the abuse for being everything that you say that I am, bigot, racist, all this crap. I don't care anymore. I love my country. I'm going to defend it to the bitter end. And the war that we need to win is not in Eastern Ukraine. It's inside our own countries. That's the issue.
That's always the issue. The enemy is within our own gates. That was true in Roman times when, Cato the Younger and Cicero, warned about Caesar and his accumulation of power while Caesar was fighting in Gaul against the barbarians. But really, the power is internal and the tyranny is internal. It's not the Russians that are imposing, punitive taxes on me, waging wars in my name, plunging my country into debt, etc. It's my own criminal government.
That's coming. Today, Nigel Farage is holding some sort of or may have already held it, a public meeting where he was going to display some strategy, which I think is marvelous, on how he's going to deport large numbers of people from England. That's what we need. I mean, you had several thousand Austrian, I don't know how many, tens of thousands, don't know how big it was. They demonstrated in Vienna recently, and they all chanted, "No importing, time for deporting." And they want to deport as many of these non-Europeans as they've got in their country. The point is this: there's always a certain number of people from outside any society that can be admitted to the society who are different from the society in small numbers, and that the society can cope with that. What the society doesn't cope well with is a massive invasion of millions. We're not coping well with it. They're not coping well with it. It has to stop.
Well, fair enough. I just don't really see how this, leads into anything referring to NATO. Does he have empirics that show that, these immigrants are more supportive than NATO than others? Why does the immigration crisis, pertain to why he thinks NATO is finished? That part I'm not making the connection on, but maybe he'll get into that.
And it has to be reversed. And that's where we're headed. We're all headed there. I just wish we had a real strategy. I cheer when I see President Trump say Washington is a disgrace. Of course it is. I've seen it deteriorate for decades. I was always embarrassed with my European colleagues in NATO whenever I'd come back for conferences in Washington and they came with me. And you see what you had on the streets of Washington, and the criminality was out of control, and it was badly run, badly organized. Dulles Airport was a disaster.
Can attest to that from my experiences in DC. Not exactly a fan. I've heard it's cleaned up a little bit, in the last decade, but, the homelessness problem was out of control. I know crime was out of control, but that is emblematic of the entire criminal government and the swamp in which it resides, I suppose. That's not unlike many big cities in the U.S., by the way, that are mismanaged and completely thrown to the wayside and covered in human excrement, like San Francisco, too, by the way.
Wants to change that. I'm 100% for it. But of course, you and I know that's the tip of the iceberg. We have at least 10 or 12 major cities over 1 million that are in terrible condition. And what do you get from the critics? Oh, it's wonderful. It's gotten so much better. Oh, we should be celebrating the presence of tens of thousands of human beings strung out on drugs, living on the streets. That's a great thing.
Yeah, that's diversity. That's DEI, right? Yeah, not something to be celebrated regardless of your stance on immigration. You can't argue that the state is running its own immigrant importation program, and open borders would not be, the default in a society that cares about maintaining its own values and influence. Of course, some people that leave are refugees that do have values more considerably aligned with America and American entrepreneurialism, but that certainly isn't true about all of them. And really the big incentive is the welfare state. The ability to come here and extract wealth from the United States is so much more prevalent than if you would go to Mexico or some other place like that. That is an incentive for a lot of people to come here.
What's wrong with that? This all has to stop. Same problems in France and Italy and Germany, and this is common to all of us. It will be reversed. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be ugly, and the whole globalist project is going to collapse. Ukraine is going to go away as a problem because we can't solve it. And I think President Trump knows we cannot solve it. This is a matter for decision by the Russians. Always has been, for a very simple reason. Who was willing to fight? The Russians. Were we willing to fight? No. Were any of the European states willing to go in there and fight, with the possible exception of the Poles, who sent thousands of Poles into that Ukrainian army to fight, and at least 2,000 or 3,000 came back dead. The Poles had said, whoops, we made a mistake. That was a dumb idea. So I don't see anybody going over there anymore, period.
Yeah, I partially agree with him. There's no doubt that Russia's in the driver's seat, maintaining and occupying something like 85 or 90% of the Donbass, which amounts to something like 20% of Ukraine's total territory. But I do think Trump could solve this thing. I mean, theoretically, the power structures and pressures against him are immense, coming from the military-industrial complex. But if Trump disengaged, actually withdrew all support from the United States to Ukraine, all the money and manpower and intelligence, you would get disengagement and it would force an inevitable peace. Zelensky would be forced to come to a peace, regardless of the situation in his country, regardless of how much the nationalists that want him fighting on till the bitter end, no matter what, no matter how many millions of men die, no matter those circumstances, that could happen. Trump's just unwilling to do it.
I think the whole idea of guarantees is something that needs to go back to the Austrian State Treaty. What was guaranteed at that point? There were no forces involved. We and our European allies simply said, yes, we will abide by the provisions in this treaty. We will not try to introduce weapons or equipment or people or anything else into Austria. Austria will govern itself. And we accept the fact that the Russians are going to monitor this for some 20, 25 years to ensure that all the provisions that they have outlined have actually been accepted and implemented. And it worked. There's nothing wrong with that. That's what needs to happen in Ukraine. But if you say we're going to do that, then you're admitting the whole thing is a lie. The entire project from the beginning has been a lie.
Yeah, that's certainly the truth. The whole Ukraine project has been a lie. The reasons for which the U.S. has bankrolled it and supported it and funneled money into Zelensky's pockets, for years. It's all been an absurd scam, for sure. There's no doubt about it. And, the reasons for which the U.S. fights in this war, through proxy become less and less tolerable to the average American, but we haven't seen much difference in policy from Trump regarding the matter. And that all is true. I mean, we do need to disengage there. But, I really think Trump, and Rubio talking about security guarantees and the idea of providing a security guarantee to Ukraine, an Article 5-like security agreement, it really skirts the issue by which this entire war was fought over, and that's Ukraine's status. Whether it was going to be part of NATO or part of the West, as many presidents had urged, like George W. Bush at the Bucharest summit, or whether it would be neutral. That's what Yanukovych wanted, and because he wanted that, he was overthrown by the U.S. government, the State Department, and likely the CIA in 2014, inserted Poroshenko and that illegitimate regime that now spawned Zelensky. And here we are. This is an empire-building scheme, but nothing about it tells me that NATO is finished. Even if the U.S. theoretically walked away from it, I think that the European powers still want to be part of it. They still believe that Russia's an existential threat. There are people literally that believe that Poland is next, that he's literally going to invade Poland, carve out a new Hitlerian empire, revive the Soviet Union, all this propaganda that Americans were told over and over again, and that the fight for democracy depends on it. The fight for democracy depends on supporting this dictator in Ukraine that has suspended elections, expanded conscription, banned opposition parties, shut down the Eastern Orthodox churches, banned oppositional media outlets. That's the fight that we need to be in it for. Not, as far as I see it, America First calls for disengagement. Trump's unwilling to do it. Instead, he seems to be creating a poison pill to any potential peace by talking security guarantees. If there are security guarantees to be made in Ukraine, let the European powers do it. Don't do it on the bankroll of the United States, risking our own entanglements against Russia again in the future after this thing, culminates. And hopefully it will culminate soon. I would like to see a peace, but I don't think a peace is possible as long as the U.S. continues to funnel money into that country. But I do want to hear from you. Let me know down below, is Douglas Macgregor right? Is NATO finished? Is what we're seeing now, indicative of that fact? Will the Europeans continue supporting NATO at all costs? Is Trump reviving his calls from 2016 to get out of NATO, or is he complacent with just the U.S. contributing less? Let me know in the comments down below. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also subscribe to Daniel Davis. He has a great podcast, and please consider becoming a YouTube member. If you click the join button below, you can help support the channel, and in return, I'll give you access to all of my members-only videos before they go live to the general public on my channel. And until I see you guys next time, no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, and no more empire. Peace out, guys. Catch you in the next one.